So, why is it that successful people find themselves sometimes feeling a sense of lostness in the world? And that is the little conversation, or the very big conversation, that I want to have with you today. And it's often the case where the answer is very simple, is because they are lost. And I think that's one of the big challenges for very driven, successful people is they struggle with the idea of being lost, the idea of being uncertain, the idea of not knowing. And that feeling for so many of them, just checking to make sure I'm actually recording here, is it's it's so uncomfortable. They really struggle with it. So I start off with this very simple premise that maybe you're feeling lost because you truly are lost. And that is okay. Think about it. If you're in the wilderness and you're walking through a thick forest, and you have this inclination that you're off the path, and you're maybe a little bit lost, you're not certain, but there's an inherent stubbornness inside of you that no, we're good, no, I think it's just down here, but there's an intuitiveness that no, you're off here. Are you better off just continue to walk? Are you better off to stop and ask yourself a better set of questions like, am I off? Is it possible? How far am I off? When did I lose my way? Do I know which direction I've come from? Can I go back over my footprint, so to speak? And I just think this idea of accepting that we're lost is very, very difficult for a lot of people who have gotten to where they've gotten to because they've had the answers, because they've been able to fix things. So that's something to think about. Just accept where you're feeling and to trust the feeling of lostness rather than trying to suppress it and push it down. And one of the ways we do that is by doubling down on what we've been doing in terms of busyness. We have three coffee shops, and we get to this point where there's a building energy that is telling us there's something off, that despite the accolades and the best coffee award and the best service and the best place to work and all these different awards that you've won, and even it might be very profitable, rather than honoring the feeling. What we do is we go, I just think I need to open up another coffee shop. I think that's going to be the answer. And what we're doing is we're creating busyness and our chaos to prolong the inevitable, and that is the re-emergence of the feeling. But often the feeling actually starts to increase. So what is that feeling? What is that energy? What is that emotion that is emerging inside of us? So these are questions that we really need to stop and ask ourselves. And I guess what I'm just looking down at my notes here, and I really sat with this question in advance, and I was just sitting to myself, and I could speak for 5 hours on this subject, but I'm just trying to hit some of the key things that I observe in people, not the things they're necessarily aware of, but the recurring patterns I see working with entrepreneurs and leaders all over the world, and athletes for that matter. And I guess that brings us to something a lot of us don't want to admit, that often we're not actually moving towards something, we're actually running away from something. Or at the very least, we're moving away from something that we don't want. And we tell ourselves a story and a narrative that actually we're heading towards some outcome that we want to create, some outcome that we want to build, some outcome that is a part of a vision that comes from a very clear, clean, pure place. When my experience tells me, both personally and professionally, that actually many of us are operating from a place of trauma, a place of reaction. We're not in relationship to our past, we're in reaction to it. And the way I often describe it is like putting different types of fuel in the tank. Diesel fuel is probably arguably the dirtiest fuel and the least healthy. And then you've got gas, as we'd say in North America, or petrol, as we'd say in many parts of Europe. And then you've got a cleaner energy, which is electric. We won't do the whole battery argument, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent for the environment for the moment. And what I like to help people realize and distinguish is the fuel that they're primarily operating from. Is it a clean fuel? In other words, the clarity of decision making, is it coming from a place of, no, this feels from an embodied place, the right thing to do. And I'm genuinely moving towards something, even if I can't fully articulate what that thing is. as opposed to a frenetic energy, a kind of an addictive energy, a pushing energy where I'm moving away from something I don't want because I don't want to go back there. As an example, poverty or a broken heart or a betrayal of sorts. And we make sure that we double down on a particular direction to make sure that that never happens again. Well, I understand the sentiment and I have compassion towards that, and it's not the worst thing in the world. The problem is when we operate from a place of less than clean fuel, we inevitably make decisions that don't align with who we are, and they compound over a period of time. And sometimes we can create the biggest empires, the biggest businesses. We can have multi-million-dollar businesses, in some cases even larger, and yet there's something that feels off. Something that feels off. So the other thing that I see is I see entrepreneurs in particular overstaying their welcome in their own business. And this idea that actually because they've created it, they have to stay with it for as long as possible. And it's no different than bringing up a child. We often hear entrepreneurs refer to their businesses as their babies. And think about it. Imagine, your son or daughter goes to college. Imagine your son or daughter gets married. Imagine your son or daughter moves into the new home and they walk into the home and there you are. They get married and they go on the honeymoon and you're on the beach, and they go to college and they go to the dorms and they're sharing a room or whatever it happens to be, and there you are. You wouldn't do it in those situations necessarily, so why do we do it in our business? And I think there is an inevitable life span of a business, not in terms of its objective and not in terms of its service and not in terms of whether the consumer wants the product or service, but I think there's an inevitable life cycle to a business in which it allows us to show up in the world in a particular way, that lights us up in a particular way, that allows us to express ourselves in a particular way. That's assuming we're even doing those things to begin with. Many of us are actually in businesses where we don't get to shine. We do the shit that no one else wants to do, and we do it because we've always done it, but we actually don't do the parts of the business that are the roles in the business that light us up. And yet we're the business owners. It's weird how we do that. It's almost like a sense of punishment. But there is this life cycle, and I think for many entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the years, some of them are in the early phases of their careers, and they come to me because they want to make sure that they don't overstay, that they don't make the wrong decisions. And then I have other entrepreneurs who are starting out and they want to make sure they make decisions that are very aligned. And then I have other entrepreneurs who come to me who are veterans in the entrepreneurial space and they've been in a business or a series of businesses for a long time. But the latter ones for sure often have overstayed either the business itself, or their relationship to the business, their role within their business. And it can be either what it is you're doing, the product or service that you're creating in the world, that has become stale for you. Sometimes it's the people you do it with, either the team or the people that you're serving. Or sometimes it's how you do it. So for example, I'll just use our own business. We run retreats for leaders and entrepreneurs all over the world, but we do them in places that just don't light me up. And it doesn't mean I have to always go to the places I want to go to. But if I'm not going to a place that lights me up or intrigues me or interests me, well, then I'm going to have a kind of a deader energy. And the sustainability and the cost over a period of time will compound and catch up with me. So it may not be the work that I'm doing. It may not be the beautiful people that come and step into our work, but it could actually be simply the locations in which we're doing them don't light me up. And therefore there's a cost, not just to me and my spirit, but also to the work and my creativity. So it can erode itself over a period of time. So sometimes it's the work we're doing. Sometimes it's time just to move away from it. And the longer we wait, the harder it is for us to re-evolve and re-emerge into the world and reinvent and do something different. Sometimes, as I've said, just repeating myself, sometimes it's not what we're doing in terms of, or exactly what we're doing in the concept. It's how we're providing that product or service into the world. And then the last piece again is who we're doing it with, both in terms of our own team, but also the people that we serve in humanity. I mean, let's be frank about it. We run events in different parts of the world. We run events here at the Brave Castle. But if I had assholes constantly coming to my work, there'd be nothing more diminishing to my creativity and my energy than having the wrong people come to what I believe is the right work. And that is actually even more compounding and more exhausting. So that's something to think about as well. And this idea of overstaying, I won't get into it, but this idea of the first, the second, and the third mountain. I'm a big believer in this idea that the third mountain is often the thing that we go to our graves with our greatest music, our greatest ideation, our greatest expression in the world goes to the grave with us, and we overstay on that second mountain. And there's a lot of reasons why we do that, which may be in a video for a different day. And I want to share a couple of other things as well. And the idea of this video is just to present you with a number of different things that may or may not be going on for you, in the hope that one strikes a chord. And if you find yourself getting, for example, agitated with one or more things that I'm sharing, trust that. Pull that thread. Be curious about that. If you find yourself going, holy shit, that thing makes sense, then be curious about that. So I'm sharing this with you in the hope that one of these things kind of asks you to kind of stop and maybe ask a better question, maybe to reflect upon something now, so you don't have to hit a wall in the future. Because there's a kind of a self-betrayal when we overstay, or when we rely on trauma to keep us going, or if we're using diesel as a primary fuel, as an example. There's a compounding effect, which I keep repeating in different ways, and it inevitably shows up either in our physical bodies, in our mental states, in our emotional well-being, or in the relationships or the destructive nature of relationships in our lives. That you can't outrun this shit. You can keep running, but you can never outrun the inevitability that this stuff will catch up. And it's hard to predict that. It's hard to see that when you're all strong and clear and full of energy. But over a period of time, it does. And the idea of this video is for you to catch maybe somewhere you're just off kilter, somewhere you're just out of alignment. It's not significant enough for you to necessarily act upon it right now. But if you can become aware of it, maybe there's some tweaks that you can make so it doesn't have a more negative effect in a period of time. The other one is that there's a few more kind of things that have emerged for me as I made some notes here today. The other one is the stories that we tell ourselves, and I suppose the attachments that we have. So as an example, when I work with entrepreneurs, depending how long they've been in their business, depending on how aligned or misaligned. I mean, I don't get a bonus check from the government if they sell their business. I don't have a horse in the race. My job is to make sure that I challenge them and support them to make sure that what they're doing in their life, in all of the key areas of their life, that they're in alignment, that they're speaking up, speaking out, sharing what they believe, doing the work that they want, and making little tweaks and pivots here and there so everything can start moving in a more fluent, coherent way. And one of the patterns I often see with business owners is when I start talking about their business is that they're very quick to tell me how they love their business. We use this word love very flippantly, very generously in the world. And while I want the world to have a lot of love, I find that there's an insincerity, and I say this with love and respect, around the way in which we use love. And we say, I love my business, or I love my team, and I love this, and I love that, and I love wine, and I love Harley Davidsons, and I love my car, and I love this, and I love, Jesus Christ, I mean, you love everything. And while on the surface that sounds great, my experience is most of us don't love our businesses. We like parts of our businesses. And when we double down and say we love something, it's very hard to imagine any degree of separation from that thing itself. We can't imagine it becomes this attachment. So the story itself has an inbuilt dysfunction in it, if the case is that you really do like what you do, but there's aspects of the business that, if you're honest with yourself, you don't love it at all. You do it because you tell yourself a story that you love your business. And it's also a way for you to stay trapped. So in essence, what I'm describing here is, if I had to be a little bit dramatic, a little bit obnoxious, and very direct, and say it's just another BS story that you're telling yourself. And what I find is that when people take separation, when they take a step back, there might be parts of what they do they genuinely love. but it's not the parts they thought they were. It's like, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I've worked with so many entrepreneurs that when they just take a step back and this is another thing, is that we live in a world where so many people go, I love to be challenged. My experience is actually no one really wants to be challenged. We say we want to be challenged, but it's conditional challenging, as in, oh no, challenge me in the areas that I want to be challenged. But as soon as it crosses a line, no, I don't want to be challenged in that. And what essentially a lot of my work is stress testing the stories that you tell yourself. Because if it's not someone like me, then who is going to do that for you? And I do believe there's tremendous value in having someone who can challenge the narratives that you're telling yourself. So if you truly love your business, and I ask the question and I listen to you and I'm absorbing and I'm watching and I'm feeling into everything you're saying and you love your business, I'm the very first person to go, holy shit, that's so cool that you love your business the way you do. How do we bottle that shit and sell it to the world? How do we bottle that shit and give it to the world? And I love helping people get to a point where they truly love what they do. But don't be too quick to tell yourself you love your business, because that may not actually be true. And really, it's a defensive position that you're putting yourself in, because no one wants to look at reinventing a relationship that you love or departing from a relationship that you love. No one does. So why do we tell ourselves that? I find that quite intriguing. And then I suppose I want to start kind of wrapping up a little bit here. As I said, I could speak about this for 5 hours, and a lot of my work is one-to-one or one-to-many or group environments. Speaking to a lens is always a little bit odd for me and always a little bit weird, and I don't get that mutual exchange of energy between myself and a human being. So this is a little bit more kind of speculative and general, in the hope that something lands for you or somebody that you send this to or forward this to in the future. And I guess, what would you do? I mean, let's kind of finish on this. Like, what do you do if you've had a degree of success and you've tasted success, but you find yourself increasingly feeling that it's not enough, or you feel that perhaps you're out of alignment, or you feel that there's something off? And notice I'm using the word feel. We tend not to think these things. These tend to be emotions that emerge in our bodies. And the challenge for many entrepreneurs in particular is we're fixers. It's what we do. We fix shit. We see a problem in the world and we go out and we create a solution. We've had a problem in our lives and we go out and create a better alternative for that. And that's the brilliance about entrepreneurship, is the beauty about entrepreneurship, the creative freedom. And we don't want to stifle that in any way, shape, or form. But what do? I mean, stop. Number one, stop. Stop doing shit. It could be a day, it could be a month, it could be an hour. I don't care about how long you stop, but just stop doing. The doing is not the answering. The doing is not going to solve this. The constant, insatiable need to do is part of the reason that this is emerging inside of you. And if you look at it like a guidance, it's a friend. It's not an enemy. It is your body starting to tell you, buddy, there's something off here. And you're either going to listen, or I'm going to take you out. And I'm going to make sure that you listen. So the sooner you start to feel these rumblings, these little nuances, these little gut reactions and just messages. And I do believe one of the most beautiful, simplest ways of doing this is to take space. And everyone thinks space is meditation. Everyone thinks space is yoga. Everyone thinks space is doing the doing. It's more doing. It's not, I'm not saying none of those things are wrong, but it's not about doing. It's about taking space to stop and ask yourselves simple, more profound questions that require or at least invite you to give a more profound and simple and honest answer. So take regular space to ask yourself, how am I doing right now? How am I feeling right now? And this can be self-check-in, or it can be checking in with somebody else. And of course, I'm going to say the next thing, get yourself a coach. Of course, I'm going to say that because that's what I do. But over and above that, even this is how much I believe in it, even if it's not me, which I do hope it is is find someone who is not just going to be your biggest believer and supporter, the person that's going to jump up and down and celebrate you, the person that sees something in you that you cannot see in yourself, somebody that sees something in you on the days that you are doubting yourself more than ever. But make sure you find someone that is going to challenge the questions, challenge the answers, challenge the stories, challenge the narrative, the actions, the inactions, because I think that is absolutely invaluable, but with real intentionality, not just hit the bullshit button, everything you say. I mean, a monkey can do that, a robot can do that, AI can do that. But someone who can truly listen to what you're saying and how you're saying it and is going to really respectfully and unapologetically challenge you. And that person tends not to be somebody at home, even though we all have loved ones that we think are the greatest coaches in the world. They're connected to the outcome. So in some way, shape, or form, there's a distortion there that's not out of integrity. It's just a misaligned distortion that doesn't necessarily serve us. So lots to think about. I've given you various different things to reflect upon, which are all ideas and nuances and patterns I see in people, all stemming from this idea that I've created success, but there's something feels off, something feels amiss, something feels like absent. And if that's the case, the truth is it probably is. So why not stop and reflect and not get too busy and stop and ask yourself better, more profound, simple questions that hopefully will yield a better result for you now, so you can build a life and not have any big regrets in the future. Take care, stay connected. If you want to send this to somebody, feel free to do so. If you want to step into my work, go to philipmckernan.com and have a look at maybe our upcoming retreat, Brave Entrepreneur, or something else. And I appreciate your time and I hope you're well. Take care.